1 Kings chapter 7. To finish the building of his own house, Solomon took 13 years. He built the house of the forest of Lebanon, 100 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high. It was supported by 4 rows of cedar columns, with cedar beams upon the columns. Moreover, it had a ceiling of cedar above the rafters, resting on the columns. These rafters numbered 45, 15 to a row. There were lattices in 3 rows, each row facing the next, and all the openings and doorposts were squared with lintels, each facing across from the next. He also made the porch of columns 50 cubits long and 30 wide. The porch extended across the front, and there were columns with a canopy in front of them. He also made the porch of the throne where he gave judgment, that is, the porch of judgment. It was paneled with cedar from floor to ceiling beams. The house in which he lived was in another court, set in deeper than the porch, and of the same construction. Solomon made a house like this porch for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had married. All the buildings were of fine stones, hewn to size and trimmed front and back with a saw. From the foundation to the bonding course and outside as far as the great court, the foundation was made of fine large blocks, and 10 cubits, some 8 cubits above, were fine stones hewn to size and cedar wood. The great court had 3 courses of hewn stones all around, and a course of cedar beams. So also were the inner court of the house of the Lord and its porch. King Solomon brought Hiram from Tyre. He was a bronze worker, the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali. His son had been from Tyre. He was endowed with wisdom, understanding, and knowledge for the doing any work in bronze. He came to King Solomon and did all of his metalwork. He fashioned 2 bronze columns, each 18 cubits high and 12 cubits in circumference. He also made 2 capitals cast in bronze to be placed on top of the columns, each of them 5 cubits high. There were meshes made like netting and braid made like chains for the capitals on top of the columns, 7 for each capital. He also cast pomegranates 2 rows around each netting to cover the capital on top of the columns. The capitals on top of the columns in the porch were made like lilies, 4 cubits high, and the capitals on 2 columns, both above and adjoining the bulge where it crossed out in the netting, had 200 pomegranates in rows around each capital. He set up the columns at the temple porch. One he set up to the south and called it Jashin, and the other to the north and called it Boaz. The top of the columns were made like a lily. Thus the work of the columns was completed. Then he made the molten sea. It was made with a circular rim and measured 10 cubits across, 5 in height and 30 in circumference. Under the brim, gourds encircled it for 10 cubits across the compass of the sea. The gourds were in 2 rows and were cast in 1 mold with the sea. This rested on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east, with their haunches all toward the center. Upon them was set the sea. It was a handbreadth thick, and its brim resembled that of a cup, being lily-shaped. Its capacity was 2,000 baths. He also made 2 stands of bronze, each 4 cubits long, 4 wide, and 3 high. When these stands were constructed, panels were set within the framework. On the panels within the frames there were lions, oxen, and cherubim, and on the frames likewise, above and below the lions and oxen, there were wreaths in hammered relief. Each stand had 4 bronze wheels and bronze axles. The 4 legs of each stand had cast braces, which were under the basin. They had wreaths on each side. The mouth of the basin was inside and a cubit above. The crown, whose opening was round, made like a receptacle, a cubit and a half in depth. There was carved work at the opening on panels that were square, not circular. The 4 wheels were below the paneling, and the axle trees of the wheels in the stand were of one piece. Each wheel was a cubit and a half high. The wheels were constructed like chariot wheels. Their axle trees, rims, spokes, and hubs were all cast. The 4 braces reached the 4 corners of each stand and formed part of the stand. At the top of the stand there was a raised collar, half a cubit high, and the handles and panels on top of the stand formed part of it. On the flat ends of the handles and on the panels, wherever there was a spare space, cherubim, lions, and palm trees were carved, as well as wreaths around it. This was how he made the 10 stands, all of the same casting, the same size, the same shape. He made 10 bronze basins, each 4 cubits in diameter, with a capacity of 40 baths, 1 basin atop each of the 10 stands. He placed the stands 5 on the south side of the house and 5 on the north. The sea he placed off to the southwest from the south side of the house. When Hiram had made the pots, shovels, and bowls, he finished all of his work for King Solomon in the house of the Lord. 2 columns, 2 nodes for the capitals on top of the columns, 2 pieces of netting covering the 2 nodes for the capitals on top of the columns, 400 pomegranates in double rows on both pieces of netting that covered the 2 nodes of the capitals on top of the columns, 10 stands, 10 basins on the stands, 1 sea, 12 oxen supporting the sea, pots, shovels, and bowls, all these articles which Hiram made for King Solomon in the house of the Lord were of burnished bronze. The king had them cast in the neighborhood of the Jordan between Succoth and Zarethan. In thick clay mold. Solomon did not weigh all the articles because they were so numerous. The weight of the bronze therefore was not determined. Solomon made all the articles that were for the house of the Lord: the golden altar, the table on which the showbread lay, the lampstands of pure gold, 5 to the right and 5 to the left, before the inner sanctuary, their flowers, lamps, and tongues of gold, basins, snuffers, bowls, cups, and fire pans of pure gold, hinges of gold for the doors of the innermost part of the house, or holy of holies, and for the door of the outer room, the nave. When all of the work undertaken by King Solomon in the house of the Lord was completed, he brought in the votive offerings of his father David, and put the silver, gold, and other articles in the treasuries of the house of the Lord. 1 Kings chapter 8. Dedication of the temple. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the princes in their ancestral houses of the Israelites. They came to King Solomon in Jerusalem to bring up the ark of the Lord's covenant from the city of David, which is Zion. All the people of Israel assembled before King Solomon during the festival in the month of Ethanim, the 7th month. When all the elders of Israel had arrived, the priests took up the ark, and they brought up the ark of the Lord and the tent of meeting with all the sacred vessels, and were in the tent. The priests and Levites brought them up. King Solomon and the entire community of Israel gathered for the occasion before the ark, sacrificed sheep and oxen too many to number or count. The priests brought the ark of the covenant of the Lord to its place, the inner sanctuary of the house, the holy of holies, beneath the wings of the cherubim. The cherubim had their wings spread out over the place of the ark, sheltering the ark and its poles from above. The poles were so long that their ends could be seen from the holy place in front of the inner sanctuary. They cannot be seen from outside, but they remain there to this day. There was nothing in the ark but the 2 stone tablets which Moses had put there at Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the Israelites after they went forth from the land of Egypt. When the priests left the holy place, the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priests could no longer minister because of the cloud, since the glory of the Lord had filled the house of the Lord. Then Solomon said, "The Lord intends to dwell in the dark cloud. I have indeed built you a princely house, the base for your enthronement forever." Israel stood, he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who, with his own mouth, spoke a promise to David my father, and by his hand fulfilled it, saying, Since the day I brought my people Israel out of Egypt, I have not chosen a city out of any tribe of Israel, for the building of the house, that my name might be there. But I have chosen David to rule my people Israel. When David my father wished to build a house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, the Lord said to him, In wishing to build a house for my name, you did well. But it is not you who will build the house, but your son, who comes from your loins. He shall build the house for my name. Now the Lord has fulfilled the word he spoke. I have succeeded David my father, and I sit on the throne of Israel. As the Lord has spoken, and I have built this house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. I have provided there a place for the ark, in which is the covenant of the Lord that he made with our ancestors when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. Solomon's prayer. Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly of Israel, and stretching forth his hands towards heaven, he said, Lord, God of Israel, there is no God like you. In heaven above or on earth below, you keep covenant and love toward your servants who walk before you with their whole heart. The covenant that you kept toward your servant David, my father, when you promised him, your mouth has spoken and your hand has fulfilled this very day. And now, Lord, God of Israel, keep toward your servant David, my father, what you promised. There shall never be wanting someone from your line to sit before me on the throne of Israel, provided that your descendants keep to their way, walking before me as you have. Now, God of Israel, may the words you spoke to your servant David, my father, be confirmed. Is God indeed to dwell on earth, if the heavens and the highest heavens cannot contain you? How much less this house which I have built? Regard kindly the prayer and petition of your servant, Lord my God, and listen to the cry of supplication which I, your servant, utter before you this day. May your eyes be open night and day toward the house, the place of which you said, my name shall be there. Listen to the prayer your servant makes toward this place. Listen to the petition of your servants and of your people Israel, which they offer toward this place. Listen from the place of your enthronement. Heaven, listen to forgive. If someone sins in some way against a neighbor, and is required to take an oath sanctioned by a curse, and comes and takes an oath before your altar in this house, listen. In heaven, act and judge your servants. Condemn the wicked, requiting their ways. Acquit the just, rewarding their justice. When your people Israel are defeated by an enemy because they sinned against you, and then they return to you, praise your name, pray to you and entreat you in this house, listen in heaven, and forgive the sin of your people Israel. Bring them back to the land you gave their ancestors. When the heavens are closed so that there is no rain because they have sinned against you, but they pray toward this place and praise your name, and turn from their sin because you have afflicted them. Listen in heaven, and forgive the sin of your servants, your people Israel, for you teach them the good way in which they should walk. Give rain to this land of yours, in which that you have given to your people as their heritage. If there is famine in the land of pestilence, or if blight comes, or mildew, or locusts, or caterpillars, if an enemy of your people presses upon them in the land and at their gates, whatever plague or sickness there may be, whatever prayer or petition any may make, any of your people Israel who know heartfelt remorse and stretch out their hands toward this house, listen in heaven, the place of your enthronement, forgive and take action. Render to each all according to their ways, and you know every heart, for it is you alone who know the heart of every human being. So may they revere you as long as they live on the land you gave our ancestors. To the foreigners likewise, who are not of your people Israel, but who come from a distant land for the sake of your name, since people will hear of your great name and your mighty hand and your outstretched arm, when they come and pray towards this house, listen in heaven, the place of your enthronement. Do all that the foreigner asks of you, that all the peoples of the earth may know your name, may revere you as do your people Israel, and may know that your name has been invoked upon this house that I have built. When your people go out to war against their enemies, by whatever way you send them, and they pray to the Lord towards the city you have chosen and the house I have built for your name, listen in heaven to their prayer and petition and uphold their cause. When they sin against you, for there is no one who does not sin, and in your anger against them you deliver them to an enemy, so that your captors carry them off to the land, and the enemy far or near, they have a change of heart in the land of their captivity, and they turn and entreat you in the land of their captors, and say, we have sinned and done wrong, we have been wicked. If with their whole heart and soul they turn back to you in the land of their enemies who took them captive, and pray to you toward the land you gave their ancestors, the city you have chosen, and the house I have built for your name, listen in heaven, your dwelling place, to their prayer and petition, and uphold their cause. Forgive your people who have sinned against you, and all the offenses that they have committed against you, and grant them mercy in the sight of their captors, so that they will be merciful to them, for they are your people and your heritage. whom you brought out of Egypt from the midst of the iron furnace. Thus may your eyes be open to the petition of your servant and to the petition of your people Israel. Thus may you listen to them whenever they call upon you, for you have set them apart from all the peoples of the earth, to be your heritage, as you declared through Moses your servant, when you brought our ancestors out of Egypt, Lord my God. After Solomon finished offering this entire prayer and petition to the Lord, he rose from before the altar of the Lord, where he had been kneeling, hands outstretched toward heaven. He stood and blessed the whole assembly of Israel, saying in a loud voice, Blessed be the Lord, who has given rest to his people. Israel, just as he promised, not a single word has gone unfulfilled of the entire gracious promise he made through Moses his servant. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our ancestors, and may he not forsake us nor cast us off. May he draw our hearts to himself, and we may walk in his ways and keep the commands, statutes, and ordinances that he enjoined on our ancestors. May these words of mine, the petition I have offered before the Lord our God, be present to the Lord our God day and night, that he may uphold the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Israel as each day requires, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God, and there is no other. Your heart must be wholly devoted to the Lord our God, observing his statutes and keeping his commandments. As on this day, the king and all of Israel with him offered sacrifices before the Lord. Solomon offered as communion offerings to the Lord 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep. Thus the king and all the Israelites dedicated the house of the Lord. On that day the king consecrated the middle of the court facing the house of the Lord. He offered there the burnt offerings, the grain offerings, and the fat of the communion offerings, because the bronze altar before the Lord was too small to hold the burnt offering, the grain offering, and the fat of the communion offering. On this occasion Solomon and all of Israel with him, a great assembly from Lebohamath to the Wadi of Egypt, celebrated the festival before the Lord our God for 7 days. On the 8th day he dismissed the people, who blessed the king, and went to their tents, rejoicing and glad of heart, because of all the blessings the Lord had given to David his servant, and to his people. The word of the Lord. God bless you.